The rain was relentless, hammering the roof of the old pickup truck as I gripped the wheel. My knuckles white. I was 25, lost in more ways than one, driving through the dark Virginia suburbs to my friend Caleb's house, chasing a promise of shelter and maybe something more. By the time I pulled into his driveway, my heart was a drumbeat of hope and dread, pounding louder than the storm outside. My name is Ethan Cole, and I'd been running from myself for years. Growing up in a small town where different was a dirty word, I learned early to hide who I was. But Caleb was the first person who saw me, really saw me, and didn't flinch. We'd met in college. Two misfits in a sea of frat boys, bonding over late-night talks about music and dreams we were too scared to chase. He was bold where I was cautious, his blonde hair always a little messy, his grin a challenge to the world. When he invited me to stay at his family's house for the summer, I said yes before I could overthink it. I didn't know then that one night, one conversation, would unravel everything. Caleb's house was a sprawling two-story relic in a quiet neighborhood, the kind where everyone knew your business but pretended they didn't. His parents were away for the month, leaving the place to him and his uncle, Marcus, who'd moved in after some vague family drama. Caleb warned me Marcus was intense, but I brushed it off. I was used to intensity. Dad's sermons about sin were intense, too. I just wanted a few weeks with Caleb, away from the world's judgment, where I could figure out what the pull in my chest meant whenever he laughed. That first night, we stayed up late in his living room, sprawled on a sagging couch, passing a bottle of cheap whiskey. The air was thick with summer heat and unspoken words. Caleb's knee brushed mine, and I froze, my pulse racing. "You ever think about just saying screw it?" he asked, his voice low, eyes locked on mine. "Like living for you, not them." I wanted to say yes, to tell him I'd been in love with him since sophomore year, but fear clamped my mouth shut. I just nodded, sipping the whiskey, letting the burn drown my cowardice. The next day, Marcus arrived. He was in his late 40s, broad-shouldered, with a face carved by years of hard living, sharp jaw, graying stubble, eyes that seemed to see through you. He carried himself like a man who'd fought battles and lost a few. Caleb introduced us. His tone clipped, and Marcus shook my hand, his grip firm, his gaze lingering a beat too long. "So, you're the friend," he said, and there was something in his voice, curiosity, maybe, or suspicion that made my skin prickle. Over the next few days, I settled into a rhythm with Caleb. We'd cook breakfast together, his shoulder bumping mine as we argued over pancake recipes. We'd explore the town, sneaking into old record stores, laughing too loud at nothing. Every touch, every glance, felt like a step towards something dangerous and beautiful. But Marcus was always there, a shadow in the house. He'd watch us from the kitchen table, nursing a coffee, his silence heavy. I told myself it was nothing, just an overprotective uncle. But the way his eyes tracked me said otherwise. One afternoon, Caleb dragged me to a local fair, the kind with rickety rides and sticky cotton candy. Under the neon lights, he grabbed my hand, pulling me toward a Ferris wheel. My heart stuttered as our fingers laced together, his palm warm against mine. "Don't overthink it, Ethan," he whispered, his breath tickling my ear. For a moment, the world was just us, spinning high above the chaos. I wanted to kiss him right there. To hell with the crowd below. But doubt crept in. What if he didn't mean it? What if I ruined everything? That night, back at the house, Marcus cornered me in the hallway. Caleb was asleep, and the house was dark, save for a single lamp casting long shadows. "You're careful, aren't you?" Marcus said, his voice low, almost a growl. "Hiding who you are?" I know that look. I froze. my stomach twisting. His words weren't a question, they were a mirror, reflecting every secret I'd buried. He stepped closer, his breath warm against my face. "Be careful with Caleb," he said. "This world doesn't forgive people like us." I didn't sleep that night. Marcus's words echoed in my head. A warning I didn't fully understand. People like us. What did he know about me? About Caleb? The next morning, Caleb noticed my quietness, his brow furrowing. "You okay, man?" he asked, his hand brushing my arm. I wanted to tell him everything about Marcus, about the fear clawing at my butt. I just nodded. "Yeah," I lied. "Just tired." But I wasn't just tired. I was terrified. Terrified of what Marcus knew, of what Caleb might feel, of what I'd lose if I let myself love him. And yet, every moment with Caleb pulled me closer to the edge, to a truth I couldn't keep running from. The days blurred into a haze of stolen glances and unspoken promises. Caleb and I fell into a rhythm, like dancers circling a flame, afraid to get too close, but unable to pull away. Every laugh, every accidental touch, felt like a spark that could ignite or destroy us. I wanted to believe we could be something more. But Marcus's words haunted me. This world doesn't forgive people like us. By the second week, the tension in the house was palpable. Marcus was a constant presence, his eyes tracking us like a hawk. He'd make small comments sharp, veiled things about choices and consequences that left me on edge. Caleb seemed oblivious, brushing off his uncle's moodiness with a roll of his eyes. "He's just grumpy," he'd say, tossing me a grin that made my chest ache. But I wasn't so sure. Marcus wasn't just grumpy. He was watching, waiting, like he knew something we didn't. One evening, Caleb suggested we sneak out to a dive bar on the edge of town. "Live a little, Ethan," he teased, his eyes glinting with mischief. The bar was a cramped, smoky hole in the wall, filled with locals nursing beers and secrets. We found a corner booth, and Caleb ordered us shots of tequila, his knee pressed against mine under the table. The alcohol loosened my tongue, and for once, I let myself really talk. I told him about my dad, about the sermons that made me feel like a stain on the world, about the nights I'd lie awake wondering if I'd ever be enough. Caleb listened, his face soft in the dim light. "You're enough, Ethan," he said, his voice steady. "You've always been enough." His hand found mine under the table, and this time, I didn't pull away. For a moment, it was just us, the noise of the bar fading into nothing. I leaned closer, my heart hammering, ready to cross that line when the door swung open, and Marcus walked in. He didn't approach us, just took a seat at the bar, his back to us. But his presence was a cold splash of reality. Caleb's hand slipped from mine, and he laughed, too loud, like nothing had happened. "Another round?" he asked, but his voice was strained. I nodded, my throat tight, and we drank in silence. The moment shattered. Back at the house, Marcus waited up. As Caleb disappeared upstairs, Marcus caught me in the kitchen, his eyes dark. "You're playing a dangerous game, kid," he said. "You think you can just be what you are here, in this town?" His words cut deep, stirring up memories of my dad's voice, of whispered slurs in high school hallways. I wanted to argue, to tell him he was wrong, but fear choked me. "I'm not doing anything," I managed, my voice barely a whisper. Marcus leaned closer, his voice dropping. "I was like you once," he said. "Thought I could have it all, love, freedom, the whole deal. But the world doesn't work that way. Not for us." He paused, his eyes searching mine. "You love him, don't you?" My breath caught. I couldn't answer, couldn't move. He nodded, like he'd seen it all before. Be careful, Ethan. Love like that it costs. I lay awake that night, Marcus's words looping in my head. He'd seen through me, seen the truth I hadn't even admitted to myself. I loved Caleb. I'd loved him for years, through every late-night talk, every shared secret. But Marcus's warning felt like a prophecy. What would loving Caleb cost me? My family, my safety, myself. The next day, Caleb dragged me to a lake near the house, a quiet spot surrounded by pines. We swam, the water cool against our skin, and for a while, it was just us again, laughing, splashing, free. But as we lay on the shore, drying in the sun, Caleb turned to me, his expression serious. What's going on with you, Ethan? You've been distant. His voice was soft, but there was hurt there, raw and real. I wanted to tell him everything about Marcus, about my fear, about the love burning a hole in my chest. But the words wouldn't come. Instead, I reached for his hand, my fingers trembling. I'm scared, I admitted, my voice breaking. Scared of this. Us. Caleb's eyes softened, and he squeezed my hand. Me too, he whispered. But I'm not running. That night, I couldn't sleep. I wandered downstairs, restless, and found Marcus in the living room, a glass of whiskey in his hand. He didn't look surprised to see me. Can't sleep either. Huh, he said, his voice softer than before. I nodded, sitting across from him, the silence heavy. Then, out of nowhere, he started talking about his life, about a man he'd loved years ago, about the choices he'd made to survive. I hid who I was, he said, his voice rough with regret. And it saved me. But it cost me everything. His story hit me like a punch. Marcus wasn't a villain, he was a warning. A man who'd loved and lost, and chosen to bury himself to survive. I wanted to hate him, to blame him for the fear he'd stirred in me. But I couldn't. He was me, in a way, just further down the road. As I climbed the stairs back to my room, I passed Caleb's door. It was ajar, and in the moonlight, I saw him sleeping, his face peaceful. My heart ached with the weight of it all, the love, the fear, the choice I knew I'd have to make. The summer heat was suffocating, but it was nothing compared to the pressure building inside me. Caleb's confession by the lake I am not running echoed in my mind, daring me to be brave. But Marcus's story, raw and heavy with regret, clung to me like damp clothes, a reminder of what could go wrong if I let myself fall. Caleb noticed the change in me. Over breakfast, his usual banter was subdued, his eyes searching mine for answers I wasn't ready to give. You're pulling away, he said finally, pushing his plate aside. Did I do something? His voice was quiet, but the hurt in it cut deeper than any shout. I wanted to tell him it wasn't him, that it was me, my fear, Marcus's warnings, but I just shook my head. It's nothing. I lied, hating myself for it. That afternoon, we drove to a nearby bookstore, a cramped place filled with the musty smell of old pages. Caleb wandered the aisles, pulling out novels and reading passages aloud with exaggerated voices, trying to make me laugh. I tried to play along, but my heart wasn't in it. Every time our eyes met, I saw the question in his, what's wrong? I wanted to grab him, to kiss him right there among the dusty shelves. But Marcus's voice was in my head, love like that it costs. Back at the house, Marcus was waiting. He didn't say anything, just handed me a beer and gestured to the porch. We sat in silence, the cicadas humming in the distance. Finally, he spoke. You're at a crossroads, Ethan, he said, his voice low. You can choose him, or you can choose safety, but you can't have both. His words were like a blade, slicing through the fragile hope I'd been clinging to. I wanted to argue, to tell him the world had changed, that we could be different. But the fear in my gut told me he might be right. That night, Caleb found me in the backyard, staring at the stars. He sat beside me, close enough that our shoulders brushed. "Talk to me, Ethan," he said, his voice soft but firm. "What's going on?" I took a deep breath, the words tumbling out before I could stop them. I told him about Marcus, about his warnings, about the fear that had been choking me since I arrived. I didn't tell him I loved him not yet, but I think he knew. Caleb listened, his face unreadable. When I finished, he was quiet for a long time. Then he turned to me, his eyes fierce. "I don't care what Marcus says," he said. "I don't care what the world thinks. I want this. I want us." His words hit me like a wave, washing away the doubt. If only for a moment. I leaned in, my lips brushing his. And for the first time, I let myself believe it could be real. But the moment didn't last. The next day, Marcus pulled Caleb aside, and I caught fragments of their argument through the kitchen window, words like reckless and dangerous. Caleb stormed out, his face red, and dragged me to the garage. "We're getting out of here," he said, tossing me the keys to his truck. "Just for a day? I can't deal with him right now." We drove to the coast, hours away, the windows down, music blaring. Caleb was quieter than usual, but his hand rested on my knee, steady and warm. We walked along the beach, the waves crashing at our feet, and for a while, it felt like we'd escaped not just Marcus, but the weight of the world. "I'm not like him, Ethan," Caleb said, stopping to face me. "I won't hide who I am, and I don't want you to, either." His words were a lifeline, but they also terrified me. I wanted to be brave like him, to love him openly, but the shadows of my past, me dad's voice, the town's whispers, Marcus's warnings were still there, pulling me back. I kissed him again, harder this time, trying to drown out the fear. But even as we stood there, wrapped in each other, I knew we couldn't outrun the storm coming for us. Back at the house, Marcus was waiting. He didn't yell, didn't accuse. He just looked at us, his eyes heavy with something like sorrow. "You're making a mistake," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "And you're going to drag him down with you." He walked away, leaving me with a sinking feeling that he might be right. That night, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, Caleb's words and Marcus's warnings warring in my head. I wanted to believe in us, in the future Caleb saw so clearly. But the world wasn't kind to people like us, and I wasn't sure I was strong enough to fight it. The house felt like a pressure cooker, every creak of the floorboards amplifying the tension. Caleb and I were tiptoeing around something bigger than us, something that could either set us free or break us apart. Marcus's presence was a constant reminder that the world outside these walls wasn't ready for us. And maybe we weren't ready for it either. Caleb tried to keep things light, dragging me to a local diner for greasy burgers and milkshakes, his laughter a balm for my frayed nerves. But even there, in the fluorescent glow of the diner, I felt eyes on Uzriel or imagined. I couldn't tell. "You're overthinking again," Caleb said, stealing a fry from my plate. "Just be here, with me." I tried, but Marcus's words were a shadow I couldn't shake. "You can't have both." One night, Caleb suggested we go to a secret spot he'd found as a Akita clearing in the woods behind the house, hidden by a curtain of pines. We spread a blanket under the stars, the air cool and sharp with the scent of pine. Caleb lay beside me, his head on my chest, and for a moment, the world felt safe. "I could stay here forever," he murmured, his voice thick with feeling. I wanted to say I could, too, but the words stuck in my throat. Instead, I kissed him, slow and deep, letting the moment speak for me. But the peace didn't last. The next morning, Marcus was waiting in the kitchen, his face grim. "We need to talk," he said, his eyes flicking between me and Caleb. Caleb rolled his eyes, but I saw the tension in his shoulders. Marcus didn't waste time. "People are talking," he said. "The neighbors. They saw you two at the fair, holding hands. They're asking questions." My stomach dropped. Caleb laughed, sharp and bitter. "Let them talk," he said. "I don't care." But Marcus wasn't done. "You think this is a game?" he snapped, his voice rising. "You think you can just flaunt this and nothing will happen? You're not just risking yourself, Caleb. You're risking him." He pointed at me, and I felt the weight of his words like a physical blow. Caleb stood, his chair scraping the floor. "You don't get to tell me how to live, Marcus," he said, his voice shaking. "Not you." The argument escalated, words flying like shrapnel. Marcus talked about his past, about the man he'd loved and lost to violence, about the scars he still carried. Caleb accused him of being a coward, of letting fear ruin his life. I sat frozen, caught between them, my own fears bubbling up. When Caleb stormed out, slamming the door, Marcus turned to me. "You see what this does?" he said. "You see what it costs." I found Caleb in the garage, tinkering with his truck, his hands shaking. "He's wrong," he said, not looking at me. "He's wrong about us." But there was a crack in his voice, a doubt I hadn't heard before. I wanted to hold him, to tell him we could face this together. But my own doubts were louder. What if Marcus was right? What if loving Caleb meant losing everything else? That night, I couldn't sleep. I wandered downstairs, restless, and found Marcus on the porch, a cigarette glowing in the dark. He didn't look at me, just spoke. "I loved someone once," he said, his voice raw. His name was David. "We thought we could make it work. Thought we were stronger than the world. We weren't." He took a drag, the smoke curling into the night. "They beat him so bad he couldn't walk for a month. I left him to save him, and I've been running ever since." His story was a punch to the gut. I saw myself in him, saw the life I could have if I let fear win. But I also saw Caleb's face, his fierce hope, his refusal to hide. I didn't know which path was right, but I knew I couldn't keep standing still. The next day, Caleb was quieter. His usual spark dimmed. We went for a drive, aimless, the silence heavy between us. Finally, he pulled over, his hands gripping the wheel. "I need to know, Ethan," he said, his voice low. "Are you in this? Really in this?" His eyes searched mine, and I felt the weight of the moment, the choice I had to make. I wanted to say yes, to promise him everything, but the fear was still there, a shadow I couldn't outrun. "I don't know," I whispered, and the hurt in his eyes was worse than any pain I'd ever felt. Caleb's hurt lingered like a bruise, coloring every moment after that drive. I'd let him down, and the weight of it was crushing. I wanted to be the man he deserved, brave, unapologetic, but fear was a chain around my heart, forged by years of hiding, of hearing my dad's voice call my feelings a sin. The house was a battleground now, the tension between Caleb, Marcus, and me a living thing. Caleb threw himself into distractions, blasting music, dragging me to local shows, trying to recapture the ease we'd had. But it was forced. His smile's too bright, his touch is too careful. I hated myself for it, for the distance I'd created, but I didn't know how to close it. One evening, Caleb suggested we go to a gay bar in the next town over, a place he'd heard about from a friend. "No one knows us there," he said, his eyes pleading. We can just be. I hesitated, Marcus's warnings ringing in my ears. But the hope in Caleb's face was too much. I nodded, and his grin was worth every ounce of fear. The bar was a riot of color and sound, a world I'd never dared imagine. Men danced together, laughed together, loved openly in a way that made my chest ache. Caleb fit right in, his confidence magnetic as he pulled me onto the dance floor. For the first time, I let myself go, let the music and his touch drown out the noise in my head. We danced, bodies pressed close, and when he kissed me under the pulsing lights, it felt like freedom. But freedom came with a price. On the way home, a group of guys in a truck tailed us, shouting slurs, their headlights blinding in the rear view. Caleb gripped the wheel, his jaw tight, and I saw the fear in his eyes, fear he'd never admit to. We lost them at a turn, but the encounter left me shaking. Marcus's words came rushing back. The world doesn't forgive people like us. Back at the house, Marcus was waiting, his face a storm. Where were you? He demanded, his eyes narrowing as he took in our flushed faces, our tangled hands. Caleb didn't back down. None of your business, he snapped. But Marcus stepped closer, his voice low and dangerous. You're going to get yourselves hurt, he said. Or worse. He looked at me, his eyes piercing. You're smarter than this, Ethan. Don't let him drag you down. Caleb exploded, shoving Marcus back. Stop it, he shouted. Stop trying to scare him. You don't get to decide our lives. Marcus didn't flinch, just stared at us, his face unreadable. You're fools, he said finally, turning away. And you'll learn the hard way. The fight left Caleb shaken, and he retreated to his room, slamming the door. I wanted to follow, to hold him, to tell him I was all in. But my feet wouldn't move. Instead, I found Marcus in the kitchen, his hands trembling as he poured a drink. I'm trying to protect you, he said, not looking at me. Both of you. His voice cracked, and I saw the pain behind his anger, the ghosts of his past still haunting him. The next day, Caleb was distant, his usual warmth replaced by a quiet anger. We went for a walk, the silence heavy between us. Finally, he stopped, his hands in his pockets. I can't do this halfway. Ethan, he said, I need you to choose. Me, or your fear. His words were a knife, cutting through every excuse I'd made. I wanted to choose him, to be brave. But the memory of those guys in the truck, of Marcus's story, held me back. That night, I lay awake, torn between love and fear. I thought of my dad, of the town I'd left behind, of the life I'd been taught to want. And I thought of Caleb, of the way his laugh lit up the world, of the future we could have if I was strong enough to fight for it. I didn't know if I could be that man, but I knew I had to try. The days that followed were a tightrope walk. Caleb's ultimatum hung between us, a challenge I wasn't sure I could meet. I loved him, God. I loved him, but love felt like a battlefield, and I was unarmed. Marcus's warnings, the slurs from the truck, the weight of my past, they were all there, whispering that this couldn't end well. Caleb tried to bridge the gap, his touches gentle, his smiles tentative. One morning, he dragged me to a farmer's market, the air thick with the scent of fresh peaches and baked bread. He bought us iced coffee, his fingers brushing mine as he handed me a cup. We're okay, right? He asked, his voice soft. I nodded, but the lie tasted bitter. We weren't okay, not yet. That afternoon, Marcus called a family meeting, just the three of us. He sat at the kitchen table, his hands folded, his face tired. I'm leaving tomorrow, he said. Got a job upstate. But before I go, I need you to hear me out. Caleb tensed. But Marcus raised a hand. Not to fight. To tell you why I'm scared for you. He told us about David again. But this time, he didn't stop at the violence. He talked about the aftermath, the shame, the isolation, the years of hiding who he was. I don't want that for you, he said, looking at Caleb, then me. But I can't stop you from choosing it. His voice broke, and I saw the man beneath the warnings. A man who'd loved so fiercely it nearly destroyed him. Caleb was quiet, his anger softened by Marcus's honesty. I'm not you, he said finally. And neither is Ethan. We can do this differently. Marcus nodded, but his eyes were sad. I hope you're right, he said. I really do. That night, Caleb found me on the porch, the air heavy with the promise of rain. He sat beside me, his shoulder against mine. I'm sorry, he said, for pushing you. I want you to be free. Ethan. Like I am. His words were a gift, but they also stung. He was free in a way I wasn't, unburdened by the weight of a past that still clung to me. I took his hand, my heart pounding. I'm trying, I said. I want to be with you. I just need time. Caleb nodded, his eyes soft. I'll wait, he said, but not forever. The honesty in his voice was a lifeline, but it also terrified me. Time was running out, and I had to choose. The next day, Marcus left. He hugged Caleb, a rare moment of warmth, and shook my hand, his grip firm. Be better than me, he whispered, his eyes locking on mine. Then he was gone, his truck disappearing down the road, leaving us in a house that felt too big, too quiet. Caleb and I spent the day together, cooking dinner, watching old movies, trying to reclaim the ease we'd lost. But the tension was still there, a current running beneath every touch, every glance. That night, as we lay in bed, Caleb's head on my chest, he whispered, I love you, Ethan. The words were a thunderclap, shaking me to my core. I wanted to say it back, to give him everything, but fear held me silent. The next morning, I woke to find a note from Caleb. Gone to clear my head. Back tonight. See, panic gripped me. Had I pushed him away? Had I lost him already? I spent the day pacing, replaying every moment, every choice. When he finally returned, his face was tired but resolute. I'm not giving up on us, he said. But you need to decide, Ethan. Soon. His words were a deadline, a line in the sand. I knew what I wanted, but the fear was still there, a shadow I had to face. As I looked at Caleb, his eyes full of hope and love, I realized the choice wasn't just about him. It was about me, about the man I wanted to be. Caleb's deadline was a ticking clock in my chest. Every moment with him felt precious, fragile, like it could slip through my fingers if I didn't hold on tight. But holding on meant facing the fear I'd carried for years, the fear that loving him would cost me everything I'd known. We spent the next few days in a delicate dance, close but cautious. Caleb was patient, but I saw the strain in his eyes, the weight of waiting for me to choose. One evening, he suggested we go to a pride event in a nearby city, a small festival he'd found online. It's not a big deal, he said, but his voice was hopeful. Just a place we can be ourselves. The festival was a burst of color rainbow flags, laughter, music pulsing through the streets. For the first time, I saw people like us, living openly, unafraid. Caleb held my hand, his grip firm, and I let myself lean into it. Let myself imagine a life where this was normal. We danced, ate street food, laughed until our sides hurt. For a few hours, I was free. the weight of my past lifted by the joy around me. But the world doesn't stay kind for long. As we left the festival, a group of men stood across the street, their eyes hard, their voices low with slurs. Caleb tightened his grip on my hand. His jaw set. "Ignore them," he whispered. But my heart was racing. Memories of the truck incident flooding back. We made it to the car, but the encounter left a mark. A reminder that freedom came with a cost. Back at the house, Caleb was quiet. His usual spark dimmed. I found him in the living room, staring at a photo of him and Marcus from years ago. "He wasn't always like this," he said, his voice soft. "He used to be happy before the world broke him." I sat beside him, my hand on his back. "We're not him," I said, echoing his words from before. "We can be different." Caleb turned to me, his eyes searching. "Can we?" he asked. "Because I need you to believe that, Ethan. I need you to fight for it." His words were a plea, and for the first time, I felt the strength to answer it. "I'm trying," I said, my voice steady. "I'm in this. Caleb, I love you." The words were out before I could stop them. Raw and true. Caleb's eyes widened, then softened, and he pulled me into a kiss that felt like a promise. For the first time, I believed we could do this, that we could face the world together. But belief is fragile, and the world is cruel. The next day, I got a call from my dad. His voice was cold, clipped, the way it always was when he was angry. "People are talking, Ethan," he said. "They say you're living in sin with that boy." My stomach dropped. I didn't know how he'd heard neighbors. Maybe, or someone from town, but his words were a hammer, smashing the fragile hope I'd built. "Come home," he said. "Fix this, or don't come back at all." I hung up, my hands shaking. Caleb found me in the kitchen, my face pale. "What's wrong?" he asked, his voice gentle. I told him everything, the words spilling out like a confession. He listened, his face unreadable, then pulled me into his arms. "You don't need him," he said. "You have me." But it wasn't that simple. My dad's ultimatum was a mirror of Marcus's warnings, a reminder that love came with a price. I wanted to choose Caleb, to build a life with him, but the cost was real me family, my home, the only world I'd ever known. As I held Caleb, his warmth grounding me, I knew the choice was coming, and it would change everything. The summer was ending, and so was my time to choose. Caleb's love was a lighthouse, guiding me through the storm. But my dad's ultimatum was an anchor, pulling me back to a life I'd outgrown. I stood at the edge of two futures, and the weight of it was crushing. Caleb sensed the shift in me. He was quieter now, his touches softer, like he was bracing for me to leave. One morning, as we sat on the porch with coffee, he looked at me, his eyes steady. "Whatever you choose, Ethan," he said, "I'll love you. But I can't keep waiting for you to decide who you are." His words were gentle, but they cut deep. He was right, I had to decide. Not just for him, but for me. That afternoon, I drove to a quiet park, needing space to think. I sat by a pond, watching the water ripple, and let myself feel everything: the fear, the love, the pain of a life I'd been taught to want. I thought of Marcus, hiding who he was to survive. I thought of my dad, his voice cold with judgment. And I thought of Caleb, his courage, his heart, the way he made me feel alive. I knew then what I had to do. I drove back to the house, my hands steady for the first time in weeks. Caleb was in the living room, strumming his guitar, his face lighting up when he saw me. I didn't hesitate. I crossed the room, took his face in my hands, and kissed him. pouring every ounce of my love into it. I choose you, I said, my voice breaking. I choose us. Caleb's eyes filled with tears, and he pulled me close, his laughter shaky. About damn time, he whispered, and we held each other, the world falling away. But the world doesn't stay gone. That night, I called my dad. I told him I loved Caleb, that I was choosing my own path. His silence was deafening, and when he finally spoke, his voice was ice. "You're no son of mine," he said, and hung up. The pain was sharp, but it wasn't the end. Caleb was there, his hand in mine, his love a shield against the loss. We talked all night, planning a future that scared us both but felt right. We'd move to a city, somewhere we could be ourselves, build a life together. It wouldn't be easy. Marcus's warnings weren't wrong, but we were stronger than the world's cruelty. The next morning, we packed up, ready to leave the house and the summer behind. As we drove away, the house fading in the rear view, I felt a weight lift. I'd lost my family, my past, but I'd gained something greater, myself. And Caleb. The road ahead was uncertain, but with his hand in mine, I knew we'd face it together. Years later, I'd look back on that summer as the moment I became who I was meant to be. Marcus's late-night visit had changed my life, not because of his warnings, but because it forced me to see the cost of hiding and the freedom of choosing love. Caleb and I built a life, messy and beautiful, in a world that wasn't always kind. But we were enough, and that was everything.